Hey buddies, welcome back to Boob Tube Buddies, the show that combines three of my favorite things: breasts, plumbing, and friendship. Thank you for joining us as we continue our series on the Netflix original, The Get Down. Today we're going to be talking about episode 2 with you guys, but before we do, quick introductions. My name is Nathan Graves. You can follow me at Twitter at RedGraveTV. And Dan, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. This is Dan Barron. You can follow me on Twitter at DanTheManAsher. I don't know why you would want to, but please just do it. I'm lonely.
I would follow you. I'd see what you have to say.
You don't follow me, though.
Do I not follow you on
don't.
Twitter?
No. Like, we do this show together and talk to each other about our Twitters, and you do not follow me.
Never once.
I don't follow you either, though.
We've talked about Twitter every episode, and I've yet to actually continue to use it. I should.
I don't want to say I don't get Twitter, because,
Sure.
like, that will, of course, alienate me from the world.
Right.
But, like, I don't think I have the stamina to keep up with Twitter.
Yeah, which is weird because it's got to be the easiest type of social media network to actually keep up with, being that it's literally 140 characters.
Sure, you would think that, but then everybody goes on rants where it's like 6 tweets at a time.
Well, you know, Dan, we talk about our Twitter a lot, but we never promote the show's Twitter. You should follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Boob Tube Buddies. You can see. Oh yeah.
And Reddit. Don't forget Reddit.
Oh yeah, our Boob Tube Buddies Reddit account. Follow us there. You can see what we're doing. You can see what new shows we're talking about. We periodically post images from the shows that we're talking about with some of our favorite lines, cool pictures relating to the shows that we like.
Yeah, Mothman and Foxman mistakenly put us in charge of social media, and we are the most inept at it.
I just don't use it, Dan. I don't use social media. I don't use social media for social purposes, which is the purpose. But, business purposes, I'll get used to.
Yeah, that makes sense. Of course, this episode is brought to you by Audible.com. Go to audibletrial.com/boobtubebuddies. It's a great way to support us financially. But if you want to support us spiritually, because, capitalism is for pigs, just go onto iTunes, subscribe, and just give us a 5-star rating. I mean, I don't want to say 5-star. Give us what we deserve, obviously. I'm not trying to bribe you. But everyone who gives me a 5-star rating is being entered in to win a $5 iTunes gift card.
They are.
They're being entered.
That's insane. Okay. And how many people win this contest?
I think by law I'm required to say 0, but they will be entered.
That's good. On publicly, you would just put that in the fine print. I'm sorry that I caused you to give that away.
That's all right. That was an asterisk that would have been at the end of the show.
Yeah,
anyway.
fair enough. Dan, are you excited to talk about the Get Down today?
I am beyond excited. So I'm going to just a little clarity for everyone.
Sure.
I watched episode 2 in preparation to record this show. And I fell into what I think everyone is all too familiar with when it comes to these shows. I couldn't stop.
I know.
I couldn't stop. Episode 2 was really good. 3, though, is I think what hooked me. We'll get there. Let's not go into the future just yet, you Whovians. But ultimately, I couldn't stop. And 2 really was the catalyst. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I guess transparency's sake, kind of like you said, fell into the same sort of trap. And, have been hooked and have seen more of the show than perspective we can provide in this episode of Boob Tube Buddies. But we're going to do our best to keep our conversation to the developments that have actually happened as far as episode 2, right?
Unless y'all are assholes, and then we're spoiling the shit out of it. That's a warning.
Leave good comments and 5-star reviews. Or Snape kills Dumbledore.
5-star reviews, or Snape kills Dumbledore. I was going to say, or else we'll just, tell you, who lives, who dies.
Right. Who tells your story?
Yeah. It's a good point. Thanks, Lynn.
Not a problem. Well, Dan, before we kick it off and before we start, talking about Get Down episode 2, I wanted to highlight one of my favorite people on the planet. And that would be...
Is it DJ Malibu?
No,
because he is dead as of episode 1.
I know he is. I'm sorry that your self-proclaimed favorite character immediately died.
Well, you know what really killed it for me, Nathan?
What?
We didn't even talk about his death in our first episode.
We didn't.
I talked about how he's my favorite.
We didn't.
And I didn't even talk about
this
how he
dramatic death of
Yeah, he got punched with holes.
At least he was high while he was doing it.
Oh, yeah, he had a great time.
So high.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Please go on.
No, it's fine. No, one of my favorite people, Dizzy D himself, Jaden Smith.
Of course, how can you forget the Karate Kid?
How can you forget the Karate Kid? Now, I will say, thus far in the Get Down, not bad. As an actor or a character, I think that this is probably the exact type of role for him. However,
What, the like existentially out there graffiti artist?
Yes. Like I can't say that better myself. Exactly.
Can't just see that as typecasting, can we?
I don't think he's been typecasted that way before.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like they figured out his shit.
They did. They did. And this might be the only thing that now he'll get typecasted as that role, if that's a common reoccurring role. But
yeah, he got Macaulay Culkin. This is Party Monster all over again.
But the reason that this speaks so well is because in real life he's very similar in a way that I quite enjoy. So I wanted to play a quick game.
Yeah, okay.
And I wanted to play this with you. And I'm really hoping that the subjects of this game are not something that you're too familiar with, because if they are, it will ruin the game. But
if it is about his Twitter, because we've had a brief chat before, if it's about his Twitter, I only know one of his tweets.
Great. Can you tell me that tweet?
I'm gonna mess up the quote here, but it's something about if trees are real. Mm-hmm. Well, how does it go? I feel like you probably have that one in front of you.
I don't have it in front of me because thankfully I didn't use that one. It didn't meet my purposes, but I think it's something about trees being blue.
Yeah.
It's something about all trees are blue, like something like that. He also has a tweet that says if babies could talk, they'd be the smartest people on the planet.
I mean,
he's
maybe.
just insightful. So therefore, I want to play a game with you, and this is inspired. Have you ever seen the show Billy on the Street?
I have seen Billy on the Street.
This is inspired by
Love that show.
I'm going to be transparent about this because this is inspired by a Billy on the Street-esque game that might be played. But as it came together, I think it came together quite well.
Can you do the voice?
No, I'm not going to try. Actually, I've done this before. My wife does a better Billy than I do. I don't sound right at all.
Okay. I was just curious.
No, I'm not going to try, but we're going to play a game called Jaden Smith Tweet or Panic at the Disco Song. All right. The goal of this game is all you got to do. I'm going to read a sentence, and you have to tell me if this is something that Jaden Smith once tweeted, or if it's the title, the name of a Panic at the Disco song. It's not a lyric; it is the name of a song. Okay.
Okay. I do know some Panic at the Disco, so I have a chance here.
All right. Good. All right. There are 16 of these, so you have to get. I need you to get 9 or more correct for the win.
All right. What's the prize?
We keep recording, and I don't completely stop in the middle of this podcast episode.
We could enter another reviewer in for $5 iTunes gift card.
All right, you get more $5 iTunes gift cards.
All right, perfect.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, and here we go. How can mirrors be real if our eyes aren't real?
I'm going Jaden.
Yes. Lying is the most fun a girl can have without taking her clothes off.
That's Panic at the Disco. I know that one.
I only apply to the Sixth Amendment.
Jaden.
Yes. Luke.
Yes.
Luke, who has the trident.
Jaden?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a good reason these tables are numbered, honey. You just haven't thought of it yet.
Oh, man. My gut is telling me Panic.
Yes.
Okay. So far, so good.
Either I lie to you or we cry together.
Panic at the Disco.
No, Jaden Smith.
Damn it.
I constantly thank God for Esteban.
Oh. Panic at the Disco.
Yes. Lately, people call me Scoop Life.
That's got to be Jaden.
That's easy. Yes. When I die, then you will realize.
Panic at the Disco.
No, Jaden Smith.
Damn it.
London beckons songs about money written by machines.
Jaden?
No, Panic at the Disco.
Damn it.
Build God, then we'll talk.
Panic at the Disco. I know that one.
Yes. Once you go in, you always come out alive.
That has the existential smacking of Jaden Smith.
It does, and it is. I have friends in holy spaces.
Panic.
Yes.
Okay.
The piano knows something I don't know.
Jaden.
No, Panic at the Disco.
Damn it.
The only difference between martyrdom and suicide is press coverage.
That one was a big hit, so we're going to go with Panic.
Correct. And school is the tool to brainwash the youth.
That sounds a little activisty, so let's go Jaden.
Yes. Correct. I think you won. You only got like 4 wrong, so that's good, if that.
That was a solid game. I hope those playing at home appreciate the moments of silence to pause.
I know, and hopefully play along themselves.
That's
Because
wow.
for the most part, all those are just existential sentences. There certainly are better ones. I don't have them pulled up. I didn't want to do too many of the ones that completely give away what it is. But, oh, no, he has some that I think he began to rhyme. Yeah, he started to rap in his tweets. So let me see if I can find it. He has tweets like, if a bookstore never runs out of a certain book, does that mean nobody reads it or everybody reads it? Which I thought is...
Oh, shit.
Yep, I know. Come on. Really? He has a tweet that just
I'm not
says...
stoned enough.
There's a tweet that just says, why is it always 3? And then repeats that in all caps. Why is it always 3?
Well, that must have been after the death of a
It is after three people died, correct?
Yeah, I have a feeling he really subscribes to that theory.
The death of 3s?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure of it. If I die in my flannel, will you write my poems on Tyler's 5 panels and Jesus' sandals? This plane is just too much to handle.
Oh. I mean, I guess the answer is yes. Is it yes?
Yeah. No, I don't know. That's a Jaden Smith tweet. It's a rap lyric.
The answer is yes, Jaden. We'll do it.
Anyways,
whatever.
I think
Jaden, you should come on our show.
You should. Come on, Jaden. He's great. He's great.
Yeah.
He's a heavy thinker. He's like you or me.
Yeah, but just maybe a little bit more out there.
Maybe.
And I mean that in a very complimentary way.
All right. Well, we're going to get started talking about the Get Down episode 2. And I wish I had it pulled up. Dan, do you know the name of this episode?
Oh, man. You know what? The worst part was I wrote it down, too. I just didn't bring my iPad over to where I'm sitting. So hang on. Let me go
I know, I've got it
notes
right,
on my iPhone.
Got it right here. Seek those who fan your flames.
That's the one.
Seek those who fan your flames. And I think we talked about this last time, but the title of each episode is displayed as graffiti on a train car, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And the same in this. What I find is interesting is they don't subscribe to the normal, like, the show starts, then there's a cold open, and then it moves into a theme song. Like there was an episode in this show, it may have not have been this one, where the title card literally didn't come up until like 15 minutes into the episode.
I already know exactly what episode that is, but we're not going to talk about that because that's in the future.
Gotcha, that's true. Regardless, the point remains that they do with their intro to the show very differently. I think the one constant is that they typically, and thus far, have opened with books.
They've opened with books. They've opened with Zeke in the future, our boy David Diggs. That's typically where it begins.
Yep.
And in this episode, obviously no different. But in this one, if I'm not mistaken, it's a very short beginning with books.
Yeah.
Like it's very quick, to the point, kind of reestablishing just who Shaolin Fantastic is to him, who Mylene is to him. Like, we just went through 90 minutes. We were going to forget.
Obviously. After the 90-minute pilot that's hopefully got us to the next episode, they did need to recap. But the more that I watch this, and by the way, we didn't talk about this last episode, but David Diggs is the actor. Nas is the rapper.
Is it officially Nas?
It is.
I did say that last episode.
You did, okay.
But I said it in, I think it was Nas, but I'm not sure.
Totally is, and it's great. And if you have the soundtrack, much of the soundtrack is fine to listen to without spoiling any of the show for yourself. There may be some that like I'd certainly have skipped because I didn't want to ruin anything, and it appeared to imply plot.
Yeah, I'm just going to say it right now. If you have the soundtrack and you haven't listened to it and spoiled it for yourself yet, do not listen to the Get Down Brothers versus the Notorious 3.
Yeah, track 20 on the soundtrack. Don't listen to that before getting to that point. And also don't listen to...
Set Me Free?
Number 22, Set Me Free.
Yeah, avoid them both until you finish the show.
Yep.
Or the respective episodes where they are introduced.
Yeah. But track number 2, Rule the World, I Came from the City, is the track that most of the shows open with, and also some end with Michael Kiwanuka singing, "Do I Have to Rule the World?" I'm not going to try to keep singing it, but regardless, it's a very...
You sure you don't want to keep doing that? That was really good.
No, thank you. It's a very folksy sounding song that then is basically there's a get down, sort of a beat comes in, Nas starts rapping, and that's what we get Books' intros over. It's a fantastic song if you haven't heard it. And even on YouTube, I think there's a remixed version.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just by Michael Kiwanuka of Rule the World. It's a fantastic song.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm going to look that up.
He has a couple songs on the, he also sings Black Man in a White World, which is also on the soundtrack.
Yeah. Great song. Great song. You do not have to get to the episode required to listen to that one.
No, and but if you've gotten this far in our series, meaning you've probably seen the first episode, the very last track on the soundtrack is Zeke's poem, "I'm the One."
Yeah.
It's still so good.
I don't know who wrote the poetry for the show and the rhymes and the lyrics for all of this, but it is so well done.
Yeah, it is, and that's put to music a little bit, and listen to that. It's amazing, and whoever's doing the actual like artistry on this rap, because they are like making a difference between, or they're drawing a parallel between poetry and hip hop, but there's a very specific difference in the writing. Like hip hop has to keep to a meter. Poetry's a little bit looser, and so the way they write, like even this episode begins with Zeke writing a poem, like my index finger and thumb push the pen to the drum, but he's writing it down as a poem and it's not set to music, and then later you see him rapping, and there's a little bit of a difference there. But
of course, I'm sure people had the same thing to say when you really kind of got into iambic pentameter. I mean, poetry translates to other things.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea, and I feel like that's the whole point of the story, is, that he's discovering his voice through hip hop, through poetry. Mm-hmm. So I think the comparison is being made very well.
Yeah, I agree.
Also, iambic pentameter. That is a Shakespeare reference. audibletrial.com/Boob Tube Buddies. Check out Shakespeare.
Thank you for defining that for us plebeians, Dan. Thank you for slipping in there that you think you're smarter than everyone.
No problem, everybody. You can see my show, Globe Theater, every Saturday. It's a podcast that I'm putting together where I myself celebrate the bard and his art. Basically, I just keep doing Hamlet over and over. By myself, one-man show.
Quickly thought of on that name. I appreciate Globe Theater.
Hey, no problem.
So let's look at the characters in this episode. Like let's take it a little bit by the characters, and let's talk like first I think about Shaolin and the Fantastic Four plus one.
You know what? I'm gonna say let's go for them last.
Ooh, okay, all right.
Let's go for them last. And the reason I say it is I feel like this episode, while this show in general has the tendency to split the attention amongst the stories, because there's some good stories going on. Mm-hmm. I'd say for sure that's the story that goes the furthest this episode.
Fair enough.
Let's save the best for last.
I will call you out on your bad improv, though, Dan. There was no yes and happening there.
Fuck you. How's that for improv?
Well, where do you want to start? Let's kick it off.
Let's start with Cadillac.
Okay.
Let's start with the least important character in this episode.
And yet last episode we focused so heavily on the symbolism that takes place in Les Inferno.
Yeah. But Cadillac is investigating what happened.
Yep.
And, kind of, who was he with? Do you remember the bodyguard that was with him? Like, is that a character that we know?
I'm pretty sure this is... Wasn't he just part of Fat Annie's, like, family?
I mean, I assumed that, but I wasn't sure if that is actually a family member or just like a muscle for the gang.
I'm not sure yet. They haven't played that up. If they're going to, that character would need to talk a little bit more, and hopefully we'll get more of that later if he remains a thing, but I don't think so.
Okay. I just wasn't sure if he was anyone in episode 1. I just couldn't remember the face. Anyway, so they go and find the two kids that we met in episode 1 from the Savage Warlords who were threatening to beat up our friends, the Fantastic Four plus one. And they find them and they take them. Because,
they do.
In the Bronx, no one really cares about kidnapping if you're kidnapping gang members.
Well, here's where we get this very stylized Baz Luhrmann feel. And this episode is not directed by Baz Luhrmann. He directs 2 of the 6, and I know one of them is episode 1. I don't know which the other one is, but Ed Bianchi is our director in this episode. Yeah. And it doesn't really matter in terms of style. We still get what I would consider to be the Baz Luhrmann feel here, where it's hyper stylized, and I think that works very well in the musical sequences, which this episode has quite a bit more of. A sequence like what we're about to see, I think, is meant to be a little darker and grittier, but it's still set to Superfly. Like, and it's still very hyper stylized. Cadillac is still introduced as like he's putting on very tight disco pants. You know, he's dancing to himself in the mirror before he goes and essentially tries to, you know, torture these kids.
Yeah, it's absolutely child torture, everybody. I mean, more psychological child torture.
But that's the thing, is what we're doing here is we're talking about the South Bronx in the 70s. We're talking about a time where crime like this was common and, you know, wrong.
And ignored.
And, yeah, exactly, and ignored. And it just kept happening. And what's interesting, and could be argued whether it's a good decision or not, is that we look at a very serious subject like that and really kind of make it funny. Because after something bad happens to one of these kids, and after Cadillac essentially accidentally shoots him, there's this sort of funny moment of like, oh shit, what do we do with the other kid? I don't know. And then they're just like arguing.
Yeah, and they have the nice argument off to the side, and other kid escaped. So what we just saw, grown-ass man Cadillac, you may know him from episode 1 as potential rapist, shoots kid in forehead, and lets other kid get away.
Yeah.
Not the best at interrogations, not the best at love. Cadillac, not the man for you.
But very into disco.
Oh, yeah. Loves disco.
Which is seeming like they're almost setting him up. Like, he loves disco so much that it's like they're setting him up as a foil to the hip-hop movement, as somebody who's, like, prefers disco above all else.
You know, I was thinking that as well, because very much the story seems to kind of, from episode 1, it's divided itself. You know, you've got Mylene, who wants to be a disco queen.
Right.
But yet Books has discovered the Get Down. He's discovered hip-hop. And, like, that almost seems to... I know the real wedge came from the I Don't Love You, but, like, that's... Like, is that building to be a wedge?
The difference in musical, like, preference?
Well, I mean, like, so for example, and this may just be me overanalyzing, but when I'm going to jump a little bit into a scene that we haven't gotten to in this episode yet, but when Grandmaster Flash is explaining what a disco record is.
Right.
And he talks about the vocals, the violins, all that is the whackness.
Yeah.
Mylene wants to live in a world of the whackness.
Yeah.
So, like, is that going to be a conflict?
What's so funny about that is that if you go and you look up, like, the history of hip-hop, it's so clearly influenced by disco. And yet, to this day, Grandmaster Flash in interviews will tell you about how that part of a record was essentially useless to them. Because it was useless to them. But yet this genre of music that is so instrumental, pun not intended, in developing hip-hop, half of it's ignored. Like, they literally only cared about the part that they could use.
Yeah, the beat.
Yeah.
The drop.
Yes, that's it. And they talk about the rest of the music so negatively, when I think that as a whole, it's so important that it existed, you know?
Well, yeah. I mean, well, so it's pop. It's pop.
It is. Yeah.
It's recognizable. It's everywhere. So that beat, while the beat itself is impressive, and trust me, I have done now some research on the different New York DJs who helped create hip hop.
Okay.
I have. Like, I got into the show and I started, like, I looked up African Bambaataa. And that beat, the beat is so important and where it comes from. And each of them had a very different style. Kool Herc was very different than African Bambaataa, who was very different than Grandmaster Flash. Grandmaster Flash, though, very heavily relied on disco, and a lot of the pop that came from him beyond the style, beyond the, you know, the first person to take two songs, two turntables, and just go back and forth. It was that his music was so quickly recognizable. So, like, the crowd would eat it up because not just that there was a great beat, but it was, this is a great beat and I know that song. So that was very important.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. I haven't done that research. Also, well, though, when you parallel that with today, what's interesting is back then, the hip-hop movement would take the part of a disco song they could use, isolate it, and rap to it. And they would forget the rest. Nowadays, almost every pop song has an alternate version that may or may not get radio play that has a hip-hop artist rapping over what is essentially the get down part of that song. So you take like California Girls, right? Like Katy Perry has a Snoop Dogg section of it.
Well, because now, Nathan, it's part of the game.
Right.
See, now it's part of what's expected. Is you've got the song, and you've got the song they'll play in the club. And you've got the song that, like, I'll use the Taylor Swift example. There was a period of time where Taylor Swift, for every album she released, there was a country version of the album and there was a poppy version of the album. And both came out simultaneously.
The poppy version of the album being the one that saw radio play?
Both, depending on what radio station you were listening to.
Yeah.
Like, it was the appealing to two different audiences. So...
That makes sense.
That's just a thing now. The music industry is just... I mean, we later on hear this sentence, well, not the exact sentence, but it comes out, it's a broken business.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that hasn't changed.
It really hasn't, the way they represent the music industry in this. And I think Cadillac sort of represents, someone who's really bad at... He represents the gangster style, the side of the show, I apologize, like the mob-esque side of the show, the crime in the South Bronx side of the show, because he is a part of Fat Annie's family. But he also represents disco and a love of disco that will, it appears, sort of contrast the hip-hop movement that, by the way, Shaolin Fantastic is a part of Annie's family as well, as we discussed last week. Those two people, I think, are destined not to get along just out of a difference in opinion of music.
Yeah. Well, and also the fact that I don't think Cadillac likes Shaolin.
I don't think Cadillac likes most people.
That's very true. He likes Mylene.
He does like Mylene. That's true.
Got that going for him. Anyway,
you want to talk about Mylene? You want to get into her
let's go to Mylene. So last we saw Mylene, she's telling Zeke she don't love him.
Yeah.
There's the heartbreak. Her father beat on her for a while, which was really disturbing.
Yes.
She went to her uncle.
She did. She went to Francisco Cruz, Jimmy Smits.
Which more and more I watch the show, more and more I love his character.
I do too. And he has been someone who's can play very different roles for me. So like he was in Dexter. He was someone who was a very likable guy, almost sort of similar, but likable, but you don't understand entirely his intentions. He's in Star Wars for whatever reason, right? Like he's Bail Organa in Star Wars.
Yeah, why not?
Which is a completely off-color role or different role. This, for him, allows his eccentricity to come into play as the character of Francisco Cruz, and I've loved watching him perform.
Yeah. Well, so where do we begin with him in this episode? So, obviously, Mylene has been with him.
Yeah. Well, she's expressed her interest in singing. Like, essentially, she's saying, like, my family won't keep me around. They don't like what I'm doing. They're kicking me out because I want to be a star. And he has this, like, inexplicable drive to help her with that. Saying, like, I understand your family is not helping you. Like, I want to be the person for you who can help you as your uncle. So he has this drive to, like, help her. And he gets in contact very quickly into this episode with Jackie Moreno.
Jackie Moreno.
It's a character introduction here, and that seems like an important moment for him.
Well, I mean, we met Jackie last episode.
Did we? I can't remember.
Yeah, he was at the bar, gambling, drinking, talking about music, and you could kind of tell that he was also equally being written off by Francisco as just like a drunk loudmouth.
I forgot about that. And yet we've introduced him as a drunk loudmouth, and he's the person that Francisco calls on when he wants a favor.
Well, you know why.
Why?
Well, that's because Jackie owes him money. Right. It's very easy to twist the arm of a person who owes you money.
Right.
I know this from my mafia connections.
Tell us more about that, Dan. Divulge.
Yeah. Do you need money, Nathan? First, let me see if I can get you under my thumb, and then we'll talk.
So you're right, though, because Francisco offers him basically a deal here that says, like, you owe me a lot of money, do something for me, and we'll talk.
Yeah. And Jackie's a smart man. So Francisco arranges it so that Jackie will show up at the church. He'll see Mylene singing, and they're going to all act like, oh, she was just discovered. And that way her father can't be too mad, I guess, because she was discovered in his church.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a half-baked scheme for sure. But it's a tried and true trope.
My thing about Francisco and his big plan to build these houses and his almost threatening Jackie Moreno into doing this is he comes across as somebody who's very he builds himself up to be somebody who's dangerous. I wonder how dangerous he actually is.
So I've been thinking about that. I think he is very dangerous.
But based on what evidence, though? Because he doesn't actually ever follow through. So far, hasn't followed through on this, I'm in charge mentality.
To me, it's still that episode 1 moment where the savage warlords run away from him.
Yeah, they see him and they think, this is somebody that we can't be around.
Yeah, to me, it's still that. Now, granted, that could be from a business interest perspective. We know that gangs are burning down buildings, and that might be a cutoff of their cash flow. Mm-hmm. But in that same regard, the person who is the cash flow to a violent gang probably has some control over the violent gang.
True. So they're sort of implying it without showing it, because in these 2 episodes, we haven't seen him torture anyone per se or put anyone through anything aggressively dangerous.
No, he's the face of a community.
Yeah.
So it's a difference. We're not looking at a crime boss. We are looking at an actual community organizer.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference there. This is not like your Tony Soprano. This is more like what's his name from House of Cards.
Like your Frank Underwood?
Yeah, your Frank Underwood, where kind of a heel. Not a good guy by any definition, but has to be a real good face.
Right. Yeah.
So it's that same type of danger. It's the politician danger. We know all about that. It's 2016.
This is so topical.
Topical. Hey guys, we're going to chat politics.
So Jackie basically tells Mylene that she needs to start getting ready. Well, this moment sort of happens, actually. Mylene's under basically house arrest.
Yeah.
And gets a call from, I don't remember the lady's name.
I don't either. I don't think her name was necessarily important.
No, but she says come to me, we're going to make you a pretty dress for church.
I had a vision. God spoke to me in a dream, and it was Mylene in an ivory dress.
A clever way for Francisco to use somebody to get Mylene free from house arrest, essentially. So her mom's like, yes, go, of course.
Go have a day. You've served your time.
Right.
Go do these chores. It's going to take you a while.
Right.
Wink, wink, wink.
But Mylene kind of knows who's actually calling her, and it is her uncle.
No, Mylene doesn't.
She goes there.
She goes there to accuse him. She goes there. She's like, I thought you were going to get me this deal. And, I'm still stuck on house arrest and my mom's making me do chores and I have to go pick up a dress. And he's like, yeah, go pick up the dress. I'm doing this. She goes to very spoiled child bitch out her uncle. And her uncle's just like, hey, what the fuck do you think I'm working on?
So happy coincidence there in the fact that she decides to go to Francisco and he's actually, it was his intention the whole time that eventually she'd get to him.
Ay, tío.
Ay, tío.
That's but she gets there.
Yeah.
He tells her she's now very excited to go get her dress. Very excited.
Because of what essentially he's saying Jackie Moreno is going to sit in the audience, and like you said earlier, basically it's going to look to everybody like there was a producer there who just happened to see you and you're going to get discovered. And so she's got to get this dress, she's got to put on her game face, and she's got to perform like she's never performed before to hopefully aspire to her dream. What do you think about Francisco's drive to help her in this way?
So I have a theory.
Okay.
I have a theory that perhaps this is obviously because we get a scene of Francisco fighting with her father in the church. About the church, lent all this money for the church. I think either he has a very deep connection to Mylene because he has never had a family of his own and this is like his daughter.
Okay.
Or this is his daughter.
This is his daughter, like he hooked up with his brother's wife?
I don't know. It is very half-baked.
It's a thought, but at this point, it feels kind of like, well, I can see what you're saying. His mother her mother in the last episode, like her first gut when she was getting basically abused by her dad was to say, "Run to your uncle." I guess that could make sense. I think we'll need more like information to find that out.
Yeah, and let me, one piece of clarification, everybody. I know that earlier in the episode we did say that we have seen it all now, or at least I have, but I will tell you, this is not something I'm coming up with because I know something.
We're not hiding. We're not going to plant spoilers. Like, does this happen? I guess we'll have to find out.
No, but it was around it was in this episode that I did come up with this theory.
I haven't thought about that, though. I really haven't.
Oh, you're going to have to rewatch it with that in mind.
Okay.
I'm telling you, the connection to her, the fact that he's willing to give Jackie Moreno as much money as Jackie is asking for, there is more to this relationship than just an uncle. Like, I love my nephews to death. And granted, maybe it's because I don't have $40,000, but yeah. I don't think I could give them $40,000.
Fair enough. We'll have to wait and see on that. There's no development on that front in this season, we'll say. But I guess
it's a theory, and from this point on, I promise to all of you,
great.
I will point out the connections as we go.
You've got a theory for 2017. Fantastic.
You're welcome, everybody. I am the Jaden Smith of this podcast.
Yes, you are. But Mylene does perform in a scene that just completely. It actually surprised me that she had the cojones to take off her gospel outfit at the end and reveal that very risque dress.
She just loves risque dresses.
Because you mentioned last episode that she wore something far too revealing to Liz Inferno.
Well, and so, I get it. You got a body, show it off. That's fine.
Okay.
Maybe not in a church.
No, not when you have a father who's like her father, who has shown himself to be really, really strict. And then she's just like, you know what? Whatever, it's for my dream. I'm basically naked on stage in a church in front of my dad. How did she not expect? I'm sure she did expect, but regardless, it's a big risk to take.
It's a huge risk
to alienate yourself that way.
It's her dream,
I guess. Right before she's supposed to sing, her dad comes up and says, "You know what? It feels like to me, her dad is. They've found a way for her dad to always be against her, no matter what she wants." Even if what she wants is in her dad's best interest, which is that she's going to sing on stage like he wants.
At the church.
Right. Immediately before she gets what she wants, her dad comes up and goes, "Never mind, I changed my mind."
Well, because I have instilled in you pride, and it's a sin.
I guess, but he's never said that before, right, to her?
So actually, interestingly enough, so I rewatched the episode to take notes. He does make a reference to it before he has that conversation.
Okay.
When he's talking to his brother, when he's talking to Francisco, he talks about too much pride as a sin. So he plants that seed.
Clever.
He plants that seed.
So it's not the Deus Ex Machina that I thought it was, right? Like, because to me that felt like, in the end they wrote this bit where all of a sudden her dad doesn't want her singing. But if he implies it at the beginning, then
he implies it at the beginning, referring to Francisco having too much pride. So now he's thinking through the pride lens.
All right.
He picked lens number 4, pride, for his mortal sins lens.
Clever. By the way, I'm looking at this dress again because I've skipped to the end of the episode. This is insane that she would wear this on stage at a church.
At a church.
There's no reason for
where her father is the pastor.
Does she think this will get her more attention from Jackie Moreno in the audience?
Well, I mean, to be fair, it got our attention, didn't it?
It's hilarious how much Jackie stands out in this crowd, though.
Oh, yeah, I think even one woman says there's evil in your eyes. Jackie does not fit in with these church-going
Is that
folk.
what evil in your eyes looks like? It's just sunglasses, a goatee, and an unbuttoned button-up shirt?
Well, I think it's also the cocaine hangover. That'll normally make your eyes look pretty evil.
Hey, Dan, by the way, you have evil in your eyes.
Oh, thanks.
Not a problem.
Buddy. That's because last night I recorded my podcast, Cocaine Hangover.
What do you talk about on Cocaine Hangover?
Honestly, there's never a script. I just do some coke and see what comes out.
You know, we forgot to talk about Mylene's scene in the barbershop where there's
super important scene. We skipped right over it.
It is, and to me, it's because I think what I like, and I had said this about the last episode, is it didn't feel much like the musical that they had made it up to be. And still to this point, like this will never, it doesn't feel like they're building this up to be a musical like a typical Broadway musical where people just bust out into song to say what they're thinking.
Yeah.
But they will bust out into song. It's source music, meaning something's playing on the radio around them, or they put on a record to sing to it, or the band is playing. So there's a contextual reason for the music. But in the barbershop, Mylene and her friends sing Turn the Beat Around. And it's just this sort of like positive, happy song where you see that her friends are musical as well. They all sing very well together. And Mylene, it's sort of a representation of her desire to be a disco star. And she does a very good job. They do a good job as like a trio. It's so Broadway.
I mean, it is. And actually, I kind of knew that this scene was important, not just because of the context. And the context is turn the beat around. Like, take this church life and turn it around. Like, make it into the stardom you want.
I didn't catch that. I didn't try to draw a connection there. That makes sense, I guess.
Are you kidding me? Before the song began, they literally pointed at the song and said, like, oh, that's my song. That's what you have to do.
I guess I missed it.
It was Magic School Bus obvious. Like, I don't think you're watching. Are you watching?
I'm watching for the fun colors and songs.
You were watching the girl in the yellow shorts, weren't you?
say that.
You were just staring at the yellow shorts.
Nope.
Okay, good, because I wasn't.
She's no Tia Mowry.
That's a very good point. Although I prefer Tamara.
We'll argue about that later.
Okay. That's on our podcast, Sister or Sister.
Sister.
Oh man, I got these firing out. I am on it tonight. Or today. You don't know what time it is. Fuck you. So, anyway, I knew this was going to be an important scene because in every single trailer for this show that I saw clips from that scene. So this was obviously a scene that they were very proud of. And you know what? They have every right to be. That was a fun scene. The girls did a great job, great performance, a lot of fun. And it was that scene where it felt very musical.
Well, and that's why Netflix would use it in that way, right? Because this is coming on the heels of, there's another musical show out right now. I can't remember the name of it. But basically on the heels of shows like Nashville, on Glee from a while ago, but regardless, like it's trying to hit an audience of like, oh, it's a musical TV show. And if you're going to do it in the way the Get Down's doing it, which is really kind of off color, not really a tried and true musical, but more a heavily reliant on music and singing show. If you're going to do it that way, you have to convince your audience that this is going to be something they've seen before, because it's not. Like the Get Down is not, you can't relate. There's no, other version of this to have ever seen. And so in a trailer, you're going to show the scene where like there's three girls in a barbershop raising their hands singing because that feels like what you would see in Hairspray or, another musical of a similar tone. So that makes sense to me that they would have used this shot.
I do like that you referenced Hairspray, the story of white girls struggling. Racist.
White girls in Baltimore. That is about race struggle. Hold on, wait a second. Hairspray is literally about race struggle. That is the point of the musical.
Hey, I am from Baltimore. I'm allowed to call you racist when you refer to things from Baltimore.
Hey Dan, let's learn about each other really quick. You're from Baltimore?
You didn't know that?
Didn't know that.
I was born in Towson, Maryland, right outside of Baltimore.
Very good. How was life in The Wire?
Well, as a white man, The Wire's very different. According to The Wire, I had a job in the media, or was a teacher,
or education.
Or
I was going to say,
corrupted
or
cop.
education, or you just had a blue collar job as a like a dock worker.
That's very true. Which, by the way, I would do terrible at. Like I have the beard. I like people would think, like they'd look at me and think, oh yeah, he'd be a good dock worker.
Yeah,
nah, man, I'd die like month one. Month one, I'd be
Instead,
dead.
you do podcasts about musicals.
Hey, that's me. That's this guy.
From Baltimore.
Straight from Baltimore. I'm real hard, guys. Go Orioles.
So like I think the Get Down here is building itself up to be more of a musical.
Yeah, I
And it
see
was in
that
episode
100%. And especially, I think we see that even more as well with the story going on with the Fantastic 4+1. Which, do you want to jump to that?
Let's do it. Here we go. Actually, you know what? Let's hop really quickly because we're about to hop into I think what's the meat of this episode, which is the Fantastic 4+1 and Shaolin Fantastic and Grandmaster Flash. There's a lot that happens for them in this episode, but before we talk about that, before we dive into their story, let's take a short break and hear a word from our sponsors.
Oh, I hate sponsors.
They're the best, Dan. They're the best.
They give us money.
They're important. They're important. We will be right back after a word from audible.com.
I'm Audible. I have a penis. Hey, little buddies, this episode is brought to you by audible.com. Go to audibletrial.com/Boob Tube Buddies and get yourself a free audiobook. Actually, one of the audiobooks I wanted to talk about real quick was American Psycho. Now, if you haven't read the book, Bret Easton Ellis did an amazing job. It's all about the slow descent into madness, and if you read it, the sentence structures, the paragraphs, the chapters, it's so well picked. Even the punctuation matters. That's why I don't know how they could possibly translate it to an audiobook. It seems like it'll be lost in translation, much like it was in the movie. However, I'm going to go to audibletrial.com/BoobTubeBuddies and listen for myself. I may hate it. You know what? If I'm being honest, I hated the movie. I also kind of hated the book. Check out audibletrial.com/BoobTubeBuddies, and you can listen to that overrated book, American Psycho.
All right, welcome back to Boob Tube Buddies. We are going to continue our discussion on the Get Down episode 2, and we're getting into the meat of this episode, which is going to be the Fantastic Four +1. Dan, what did you think about the journey that we kind of go through here with this group of kids?
Well, this journey, if I may, was an epic kung fu quest. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I am not saying that sarcastically, even though
you're
I have
not.
my sarcastic voice on.
Completely with you.
Like, this, more than anything we saw in the first episode, was a kung fu quest. In fact, the first line from Grandmaster Flash was "Oos."
They keep saying "Oos." They say "Oos" a couple times.
Yeah, "Oos, Grandmaster."
In their, I don't know where he lives, but in Shaolin Fantastic's room,
dilapidated, broke down
building, yeah. He has a poster right behind his 2 turntables. He has a poster that says "Kung Fu Master Choose Defeat." It's a movie poster. He's so completely absorbed in this kung fu culture, and Grandmaster Flash, I don't know if he instilled that in Shaolin, or if this is just sort of something that they have in common.
I think it's more of an in common thing. Kung fu films in the 70s were huge. Yeah. I mean, they were huge. That was the genre.
Sure.
I granted, I still have mad respect for Bruce Lee. Like, you look back at those movies, he's a phenomenal athlete. But there was this. Oh, absolutely, he's an athlete.
I agree. I wasn't
the martial arts were in the Olympics, Nathan. So why don't you get off? All right.
Fair enough.
Seek those who fan your flames, Nathan.
Hey, good job.
Hey, no problem. The idea being, with those movies, there was. I mean, here I'm going back into film class for a second. Let me close my eyes and remember. There was such escapism in those films.
Yeah.
Nothing was familiar. The settings were very much not like, if you were a kid in New York who was going through trouble, mm-hmm. you go see that movie, you're not in a big city. A lot of the times you're in a feudal area.
Yeah.
The surroundings were very wide open spaces, and always the story was about a young person who was down on their luck, who found inner strength, who rose up, fought evil, and won the day. So in a kung fu movie, I think a lot of kids in this time found themselves.
Yeah.
It's very much the same reason why Star Wars was successful at this time.
Yeah, I was going to mention that because last episode that's referenced as sort of the big thing right now, and it's the exact same thing, which is like sci-fi like that is escapist. It's completely escapist. It's like this is not just a world that seems different. This is a completely different universe, and it's something that at the time was so like, I just want to go. It's what's superhero movies now. They're so different than real life that you want to go, and that's your escapist sort of mentality.
Now, not to go too far into film, but I would actually disagree with your point on superhero films. Superhero films are different because it very much is real life. In that, not the superpower part. That's very important.
Well, of course.
Sorry, everybody.
The Superman. Good versus evil part, like the war, like it counters the war.
No, I think with modern superhero films, it is literally our world, and someone pasted a superhero into it.
But that's kind of what's escapist about it to me, because I go to see a version of our world where there's someone powerful enough to save it from something so insane as an alien attack or supernatural.
I'm not saying that it helps you stop feeling helpless. I'm just saying it's not escapism.
Fair enough.
Escapism takes you to a whole nother place where it's not your world, it's not your problem.
You think Kung Fu films did that because they were a culture that people weren't familiar with?
I think 100% that was it. It was a culture that we were becoming familiar with, but it was a culture that we didn't really know, in language we didn't understand, and then dubbed over in very funny ways.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. I mean, look, the Kung Fu and hip hop are so uniquely tied together. In fact, by next episode, or maybe a few later down the line, I'm going to do some research, but like even Wu-Tang Clan.
Yeah.
Wu-Tang Clan is
The
deeply
combination
rooted.
of both of those things, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm very curious about why Kung Fu and hip hop are so tied together. I'll research. We'll come back. What's
an example of a modern Kung Fu film?
Most recent that I've seen is, I think most modern Kung Fu director is Stephen Chow.
Okay.
He did Shaolin Soccer. He did Kung Fu Hustle.
Are there any like American films that sort of parallel the Kung Fu?
I know exactly what you mean. Karate Kid starring Jaden Smith.
You're the
And Jackie
fucking
Chan.
worst. And Jackie Chan. You know, I
Actually,
saw
I
that
like that
movie.
movie.
Thank God. I was going to say that at the exact same time. It's not that bad. It is not Karate Kid.
It's not Karate Kid.
No, but that
I
doesn't
will
make
say,
it a bad family movie.
I'm going to say it right now. Mr. Miyagi's story in the original Karate Kid, really sad. Jackie Chan's story in the new Karate Kid,
Yeah.
way more heartbreaking.
Really sad. Yeah.
Way more heartbreaking.
And
Guys,
Jaden Smith proving what? What were you going to say?
you can check out our Karate Kid podcast, Sweep the Leg.
I think you're going to say wax on.
I thought about it. Anyway. No, Jaden Smith wasn't bad in it either, though.
Well, I think he's proving himself to not be a bad actor. He's just a bad person.
Whoa.
I'm kidding.
Whoa.
I should have said weird person in that joke. Would I
Bad
hit
is subjective, you know?
No, I don't hate the kid. I like the Smiths.
I like the Smiths as well, although I have an interesting point that I'm going to make real quick, and then
about-
we are not going to talk about it until we get towards the end of the series, which is...
It better not
I
be
find
about Morrissey.
It's not. I find it very funny that Jaden Smith is in a series about the birth of hip-hop when I say Will Smith was the absolute death of hip-hop.
You don't want to dive into that?
I mean, do you want to? Do you want to talk about the Willennium?
Yes, please. Why was Will Smith the death of hip hop?
Where is hip-hop today? The answer is, if you're looking at what hip-hop is, it's not really there anymore.
Okay.
Rap and like this party style of hip-hop is there.
Yeah, right.
But if we look at the Fresh Prince handed hip-hop over to white people on a silver platter.
Okay. So what you're saying is after Will Smith related to white people and developed hip hop that was like clean and that people could understand and enjoy, then all of a sudden the hip hop industry had to cater to that audience?
I'm saying then hip-hop industry went through its own form of grunge.
Okay,
At that
makes
point,
sense.
they couldn't be fun and upbeat, and it wasn't a rap battle situation in the same way that it was. It's not what it was, and instead it became very much, you know, the gang wars of LA. It became very much about how hard life was again. Like it had to go through its dark grunge phase.
Yeah, because they had to sort of retroactively like go the opposite direction.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not really trying to blame Will Smith. It's not his fault. He got caught in the middle of it. Jazzy Jeff, sorry, you're kind of inadvertently part of that too.
Yeah. I mean, Will Smith's like later quote unquote hip hop was not good per se. I'm not going to say any of it was good. But
Wild Wild West?
What'd you say?
Wild Wild West.
Yes.
That's a great song.
I can't claim to know a ton of Will Smith.
Commercial hip hop. That's Will Smith right there. Commercial hip hop. That being said, if you disagree with my opinion, please tell me why on Twitter.
Please
tell me why.
Please leave us 5 stars and then comment with a disagreeing opinion.
Actually, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just not 1 star, please.
1 star doesn't mean you disagree. 1 star means you hate us as people. And
Yeah.
you're not that mean.
That's rude. I'm not trying to like blast Will Smith here because I don't like him as a person. I feel like he'd be a great guy to hang out with. I'd love to hang out with him. I blame NBC more than I blame Will Smith, but like he was the poster boy for it.
So do you think the Kung Fu mentality applies not only to the personalities of these characters, but to their story? Or do you think this is just to characterize them as like fans of Kung Fu films?
I think it's a framing method for their quest.
Okay.
I genuinely, like, they're fans. Obviously, they're fans. I think Kung Fu is a framing method for their quest to become DJs.
I was going to say to become DJs, or are we talking isolated to figure out the Purple Crayon?
Well, okay, yeah, we haven't even gotten to the Purple Crayon yet. The Purple Crayon is the framing method.
Yeah.
So Grandmaster Flash gives them a purple crayon and says, this is his secret. This is the secret to what he does. And they have 24 hours to figure it out. And man, those 24 hours, real funny. Real funny. Because think about it. Think about it right now. I want you to go into your own head for a second. And here I am. I'm podcasting. Obviously, Nathan and I, we are master podcasters. We have tons of fans. Everybody
We've been
likes
doing
us.
this for 4 episodes.
Yeah, like everybody's a fan. And you're like, oh, Dan mainly, and Nathan, I guess a little, we want to be podcasters like you. How do we do it? And I go, here's a crayon. Figure it out. Mm-hmm. And you're going to do what with it?
Right.
Now, in this case, nothing. We don't use crayons in our podcast. But in the case...
You're going to draw on your computer and ruin it.
I don't think a crayon ruins it, per se.
If you press hard enough.
I guess that's a good point.
The laminate of your laptop.
Oh, that's a shame.
I know. It's a sad image.
Your pretty MacBook is just destroyed.
Yeah.
But the purple crayon ends up being the solution to finding the get down on a record.
Yeah.
Which I don't know about you. I figured that out as soon as he was handing the crayon.
I didn't. And I don't think
No?
I was thinking. No, I don't think I was thinking too deep into it. I don't know why. I also wasn't watching Shaolin or books. I spend so much time when they're all together watching the other 3 kids.
To see what they're just doing in the background?
Seriously, that's not like absolutely. Like watching Dizzy draw on the walls, and watching Ra just sit there bored or make fun of what they're trying to actually accomplish. So I literally wasn't even trying to figure it out with them. I think I was with the other 3 kids who gave up and left.
You just didn't care.
It's not that I didn't care. It's an interesting mystery. I kind of wanted it to be resolved for me in the moment. But the other kids literally sat there for too long to the point that they all just got up and they were like, sorry, what is it? They had mac and
Harold and the magic crayon.
Well, yes. And at home, their mother was making mac and cheese, but with the real cheese and with the chili beef.
Let me rephrase that correctly. Mom is making rice-a-roni with the non-government cheese and the chili beef.
That sounds really good.
It's rice-a-roni, Nathan.
Doesn't matter.
You don't know what government cheese is? Neither do I. We've never had to experience it.
No, rice-a-roni sounds good. I'm hungry.
Oh, I'd like some rice-a-roni. If you're making, I'll take some.
Now, hold on. Zeke did say the real cheese.
Yeah, because government cheese isn't real cheese.
As opposed to like Kraft singles?
No, government cheese was like, think of it almost like breadline cheese.
Okay.
It was like cheese they gave out because, like, I guess it was a staple of your diet.
I am displaying my severe lack of perspective.
Yeah, you should just Google government cheese while I continue my point about the crayon. So the crayon, instantly I figured it out. Immediately I was like, oh yeah, that's probably how you figure out where the get down is. Now granted, I didn't think, oh, you should draw all the way down the wax, like draw on the record. I was just thinking like you mark a line.
Well, that's interesting because when I saw that, I thought the same thing too. Growing up, my dad had, and he got it from his parents who had it in their house growing up, like an old antique. It's really cool. It's a record player, right? But it's a big cabinet. It's not just like a turntable.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Big cabinet record player. And you got to raise like a wooden, like curved door to access the single turntable that's under there. And it's huge. And my dad had a bunch of old vinyl. And vinyl you can go, and we used to go to like a record store in Tampa relatively often, and you can get a vinyl record for 85 cents. You still can.
Didn't your dad run a music shop?
He did, yeah. They worked, he and his friend worked at what is now West Side Shops. I can't remember. It's down in Tampa, essentially. It's a mall now, back where there's an FYE now where they used to work, but there was a record shop there, and they also worked out in California in a record shop there. And yeah, so records like that we had a ton of growing up, and they were old. They were like my Styx, Spandau Ballet, Billy Joel. We had older records like this, right? And Boston was one that we could find. And what I would do is go to this record store in Tampa and purchase like old records like that, not new pressings of vinyl. Like if I wanted to go get a current modern day record, right? Like Frank Ocean Blonde just came out, right? And if I want to go get that on vinyl, I'm going to go spend $25, $30 for a recent pressing of a brand new record. But I can also go get a Styx record for 85 cents at Park Avenue in Orlando.
No, not Park Ave. You get that at Rock and Roll Heaven. Park Ave, overpriced.
Take me to Rock and Roll Heaven. Where is that?
Oh my God, Rock and Roll Heaven is on Orange, across from White Wolf Cafe.
All right, so if you live in the Central Florida area, there is a good record store for you to go to if you want to get some cheap vinyl. My problem, though, is that as a kid growing up, I saw the like DJ aesthetic of like, I'm going to scratch the record.
Uh-oh.
One time I did stop a record, and it made the noise, and I was so excited. It really did make the iconic, like I wish I'd had a microphone to it so I could have a permanent, real sound effect. It made the noise. But I'm also like terrified because I'm breaking the record, right? Like I'm scratching it permanently. I never could have thought that you could take a crayon and draw literally all the way down the diameter of the record. And that would, or the radius, I guess you're going halfway.
Yeah.
Of that record.
Thanks, nerd.
Not a problem. And you said what did you say? Iambic pentameter. Iambic pentameter, not diamic pentameter. Iambic pentameter. You mentioned that earlier, so.
Yeah, because I have a Globe Theater podcast. I talk about iambic pentameter every week, and if you took the time and listened, you would know how important it was to me.
I'm not going to dive into how every week you make the same point about iambic pentameter, apparently, on your podcast. Only need to listen to one episode of the Globe Theater.
It's the most important form of writing.
But how can you take a record and draw all the way down it and still be playable? And that has all to do with like the physics of an actual vinyl record and how the grooves are pressed and all that sort of stuff. But when I watched him draw that, like I realized if I had been thinking about it, I don't think I would have thought, oh, draw all the way down the record.
Yeah. Well, I think more for me was, and this is my lack of knowledge with the physics. So after you draw the line, sorry, I'll get to the point, and then I'll say the thing that baffled me a little bit, or rather, I don't understand records enough because I'm an idiot. But, so you draw the line to mark where the get down is. They figured this out. Grandmaster comes back, and he starts to kind of explain his style. Now that you've learned how to mark the get down, the first thing you have to do is lay the needle, and you have to, what did he say, dig a trench?
Yeah, you've got to sort of like make a groove right where you know you can go back. Physically, you'll feel it.
Yeah. Now, is that trench before the get down?
It's basically because, and I've read about Grandmaster Flash and the way that he would do this, because he would literally be able to do this with his hands, understanding the timing. He would know the feel of a rotation of a record so that he knew exactly how far he had to go back. And so the groove can be right on the get down. I don't think it necessarily matters. It's basically allowing you to not have to look at the crayon, so you feel it. Right
so
there.
I understand that idea, but how does that not ruin the record?
I mean, I guess you're right. Like it's making the groove right before the get down, so that you never actually hear that, and you pull it right on back until you feel that click of the groove, and you move, and that's where you would let go after you move the.
It's locked under the needle.
Yeah, and then you transition back over to record one, and you play it from there. You can do that with both records over and over again.
Now, this is actually the point you make. This scene is him teaching them about, one record is the present. It's what the people are partying to.
Yeah.
The other record is the future. It's where you live. You care about the present, but you pay attention to the future.
Yeah.
And it's such a great concept watching him go back and forth and back and forth. And then the coolest, like even I thought this was one of the coolest things, and I'm sure there was a little TV magic into it.
Still.
But he lets the record start playing on its own, and both are spinning. He walks around the room, has a conversation with them even interjecting, and the conversation ends in the exact moment he walks up and flips the mixer, and the one record had just hit the get down.
It's perfect.
It is. That was, again, assuming that you've all watched this episode as well, amazing. And I wish I knew someone who could do that.
You have to imagine that Grandmaster Flash actually could. You have to imagine that these old DJs that you're talking about from New York, like Kool Herc, right? You have to imagine that was something that they could physically actually were capable of. And Grandmaster Flash was not just a kid who grew up in the South Bronx with nothing and then got a turntable and made something of himself. He studied long and hard, math, science. Like, he understood not just the fact that, oh, when I move this record back here and start it again, it makes a cool beat. He understood the ratios and the math involved in actually making that happen. So I completely believe that with that intuition and with that study, he would be able to pick that back up in no time. It's just physics. It's pretty simple, like 2D geometry as well. Like, it's spinning in a certain time and being able to move it back to that point. It's impressive. It's incredibly impressive. It's not something I'll ever be able to do, but
No, not you. I could.
Yeah, I try it next episode.
Yeah, I was doing it on Algorithm before.
On Algorithm.
Y'all missed it. I was looking for the get down in Verve's Bittersweet Symphony. It is hard to find.
But yeah, so let's sort of move because I want us to get sort of here to the end. So there's this kung fu mastery sort of teaching where Grandmaster Flash teaches them about the get down. This is now, Shaolin trying to practice it over and over and over again, failing as the kids are making quips that are, hilarious to watch. But then he gets it eventually. And there's this like positive vibe where it's like, oh my God, we're a group. We're the Fantastic Four plus one. We have a DJ. We have a wordsmith. We're all here, and we're gonna
We
be
have
a group.
Jaden Smith.
We have Jaden Smith, yeah, who can easily be our wordsmith. It's not necessarily going to rhyme.
Jaden Wordsmith.
Jesus. And yet at the end of this episode, after this positivity of, oh my God, we learned, we got through the quest, we made it, we know how to do it, it all sort of comes crashing down, or burning down here at the end.
Yep. The Savage Warlord kids were paid to burn down another random building, and it happens to be the very building that Shaolin Fantastic calls home, killing the pigeons he keeps on the roof.
Oh, the pigeons! Yeah, you had spoken with me before the episode about your point about the pigeons. You want to go over that?
That was such a beautiful scene. It was Shaolin and Zeke on the roof by themselves, no one else there, and you see that Shaolin has this collection of pigeons. And he lets them all out, and they fly in circles. He's got his own like handmade coop, and Shaolin says this great line where he's saying like, "You write, right? Like you learn, you know how to read, you write. Well, when you write, that's when you fly." And it's this great line, and you can tell that really like touches Zeke's heart. And then the episode burns the building down and shows us nothing about the pigeons, leaving me only to assume that they died a fiery death trapped in a coop that was built by Shaolin Fantastic on top of the roof.
That's sad symbolism, or sad sort of.
I can't even call it symbolism because they didn't talk about it. It was ignored. Pigeons don't matter.
You had talked about what I believe is called Chekhov's gun, right? Which is this not a theory, but this sort of common trope in theater writing that if a gun is introduced in the first act, it must go off by the third. At its simplest, that's how it's stated, which is like you introduce this concept of something in the beginning, and by the end, it has to have made an impact on the story. Very common, and it actually still to this day, even knowing it, that still makes a huge impact on an audience when you introduce me something. And you can even take that back to what you were saying earlier about Mylene's dad's thing about pride.
Yep.
When he talks about pride in the beginning, normally you would want it mentioned more than just the one time. But regardless, there's this moment at the end where everything ties back to pride, and at that point you've forgotten about it. And then it's referenced again. And then you go, oh my God, like I didn't think about that. You're right. Like that was there the whole time. The pigeons aren't really directly mentioned in the end. But if you think about the fact that, yes, they're dead and that happened, then you get the sort of payoff, the Chekhov's gun payoff.
Yeah. And that's the thing is those pigeons, that was symbolism for Zeke flying, and it was burnt. And, look, I get it. You got to seek those who fan your flames, but...
God. That
maybe.
Maybe it's the third time we've referenced that. So there's our gun.
There's our
just
Chekhov
the title
gun.
of the damn episode.
Pew pew. We're out of here.
So Shaolin says essentially he's parting ways with the guys because he's lost all his records. He basically has nothing to go back to at this point. He thinks his career's over.
More interesting than that, actually. That was the reaction I was expecting, and ultimately that is kind of what it was. But what it really became was Shaolin saying like, all right, I got a plan. We're going to fix this. We're gonna get everything back together. We're gonna go work for Fat Annie. We'll make some quick money. And this, by the way, is after Shaolin had kind of already distanced himself from the family.
Right.
He wanted to go on a vacation where he took some time off to focus on his music.
But isn't this also where he says, next time you see me across the street, like...
Well, that's after. So he's saying, like, he's saying to Zeke, we're gonna go work for Fat Annie, and Zeke's like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, we can, my dad or my uncle is he's a maintenance man.
Yeah.
We can work with him. We can make some money. They get into a disagreement, and the band broke up.
Yeah, this is when they refuse his offer, his way of doing things. Yeah, the band sort of breaks up, and Shaolin says, I don't remember the line, but next time you see me across the street, look the other way, turn the other way.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So it's the negative mentality of like an ending for their story, but it remains to be seen. Like they're going to go two different directions. The boys are now going to try to make money, on their own, and Shaolin is going to go work for Fat Annie to try to get a little bit of money on his own, so that they can regain the equipment, the music, the records that they had, and to continue their kung fu quest of becoming DJs and becoming a hip hop group in the South Bronx.
Yeah.
So Dan, like in the end of this episode, how did you feel about our progression as a show?
Well, I'll tell you, I was not expecting the burning building.
I agree.
Was not. I thought we made great progress, and I thought the hero's journey was going to continue on as expected.
Sure.
But in fact, they took us back to square one, which is interesting in episode 2.
It is, and it never feels good to have lost everything you feel like you've gained. I will say that. Like by the end of this episode, I go, oh God, okay. Like you'd taught me about the Get Down. You'd gone through this cool quest. You'd figured out the purple crayon. You had all the records that Shao shows that he has. And then you just get rid of all of it, episode 2. Like it better bounce back and very quickly, I hope, feel like you're still on this quest to become DJs, because being so far set back, what I want more of at this point and what the show has given me is the music. I want more moments where you get to watch Grandmaster Flash do his thing or watch Shao do his thing should he become really good at it. That's what I want from the show.
Yeah.
And to erase all of it in episode 2 is ballsy for me and sort of gives me pause, which I think is why at the end of this episode I didn't feel the same drive to just go like, oh, I need the next one as I did in episode 1.
Sure. And I think it's also because it's a little dejecting because, I preface this by saying I don't mean to make this joke, but the sentence popped into my head.
Great.
Shao found those who fan his flames.
God damn it.
But like he finally learned to trust this group, because you can tell from episode 1 he's very independent.
Sure.
And now he's found trust, and then in the same episode he lost it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't leave a good taste in my mouth, personally. Now I will say there's also one other moment of the show that we forgot to mention that is important.
Okay.
And that is Mylene asking for Zeke's help.
That's true, because we're seeing this relationship that Mylene has rejected.
Yep.
Now rejected on Zeke's end, because Mylene needs him to play piano at this, showing she's going to have to try to get this record producer to notice her, right?
Yeah.
And
she needs Zeke. She needs Zeke to spice it up, because he'll do well. He
will. And she compares them to being pancakes and syrup. And Zeke's response, because this is in the middle of them trying to figure out the purple crayon. Zeke's response is, pancakes don't just get syrup whenever they want. Syrup's got standards.
Great line.
It's fantastic. It's so good. And so their relationship, and I get this too. Like I get Zeke, after he's been hurt like that, I'm actually surprised that Mylene's coming back thinking, oh, I'll just be able to stroke his ego a little bit and get what I want. Like it feels a little selfish to me.
She's using him. And I agreed with Zeke when he said that she's using him. But then you get this great speech from Ra where he tells Zeke, he's like, you're being an idiot. Like, we're all put on this earth. Yeah. It's just sad to lose a friend.
Yeah.
And it turns
I
it
don't
around
want
for
that
Zeke.
to be true, because I want, not only do I want, it's a romance. So sure, Zeke and Mylene together. But I also want to like both of them, because if I don't like Mylene, I'm not going to want them together. And then if they get together, I'll actually feel disappointed.
I have to imagine that ultimately we're going to get redemption for Mylene, but we haven't seen her go through many trials yet.
Okay.
Whereas Zeke, we're very well aware of his trials. So I feel like we're a little bit more, as an audience, protective of Zeke than we are of Mylene, who on the surface has a very happy-go-lucky outlook.
Yeah.
And I think we'll see more on the way of how hard life is for her, especially with her father and her dream. But I think at this point in time, we don't have that.
Sure.
But ultimately, Zeke does take that advice, and he does help her. He plays the piano for her, and he writes the words for her to sing. He writes this beautiful poem that she sings in the church about.
Great.
About basically, it's a warning
Her
to
life.
her father.
Yeah.
I will run away. It will happen.
It's cool, and it solidifies Zeke as the wordsmith and as the guy. The poetry so far that he's produced has just been so phenomenal, and it's the thing that keeps me coming back are these moments where you get not just the hip hop or the disco, right? Those are the musical styles, but the lyrical relevance to that time period and to these characters. It gives you the feeling of it really being a musical, and it is what's keeping me driving. These moments of Zeke writing these beautiful pieces of poetry, and this episode ends on the song. That's what keeps me going. I want more music. I want more impactful moments of Mylene's passion for disco and Zeke's passion for hip hop, and those two things sort of coming into their own together.
Yeah.
And I hope we continue to get that as the show progresses. So, that is episode 2 of the Get Down.
Yep.
It has
now. Go ahead. Oh, please.
No. Keep going.
I was going to say, before we get to the question of the episode.
Okay.
The same question we asked last episode. It's the most important question
I'm aware of it.
our podcast.
Yes.
Before we get there, I'm going to go ahead and say we take a quick break so we can have a second throw to our sponsor. And let's really drive these people to sign up for Audible and give us money.
Ooh, I don't mind that at all. Absolutely, guys. We will be right back with the big question of the episode right after another word from our sponsor. Hey buddies, this episode of Boob Tube Buddies is brought to you by Audible.com, the biggest thing to happen to literature since regular books. But before ebooks. Hey parents, do you remember what it felt like to be in your 20s? Wild and free, not a care in the world, running naked through the flower fields of Woodstock. I'm also assuming you were born in 1949. Now look at you, stuck at home every night, reading nursery rhymes to a crying 2-year-old wishing to God you'd never gotten in that broom closet at your high school reunion. Well, Audible is here to help. Just put on BBC's 50 favorite nursery rhymes and let the sweet stylings of Mother Goose carry your little prince off to dreamland. Now you can get back to your bohemian lifestyle, listening to Joe Cocker and doing coke off the living room ottoman. Go to audibletrial.com/boobtubebuddies, sign up for a free 30-day trial of Audible, and download a free audiobook of your choice. And if you choose correctly, you'll be back in those bell bottoms before you can say oh-blah-dee, oh-blah-da. We guarantee it.
Welcome back, everybody. All right, here we go. Nathan, please ask the question.
All right, Dan. Was this episode worth $9 million?
Nathan, what an interesting question that is. I hadn't thought about this in advance.
No.
No, I hadn't even given it a thought, but I'm going to answer no.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm going to say no. And one of the big reasons, and it's such a simple thing, it was all sets. Everything was sets. It was a broken down apartment. It was a barbershop. It was a diner. It was a church. There was not much going on to make me think that they did a lot of design.
I agree, but here's my thing, is I don't think we can continue to judge this $9 million question on production value, right?
Okay.
Because the value can't be in the sets. Like you said, there's no reason that producing this would cost $9 million. $9 million comes from the salary it takes to pay somebody to write an original song like that, from the source music they use. I think at one point they're listening to Pink Panther.
Yeah, there's Pink Panther, there's Superfly.
Superfly. It's all in there. So there's royalties on that. There's animators, because all of these shots of the South Bronx and these trains running by, guess what? Sorry, they're not real, because buildings aren't burnt down like that presently in the Bronx. Right?
What?
I know, I'm sorry to tell you. So like the value can't come from, oh, we need to find a location that we can do up like a disco and spend a couple $1,000s decorating. it's got to be all these other things. And yet I still feel like, and I don't know, I still feel like it could have come in under 9 million.
I think, well, really, every episode should have come in
Well,
under
yeah,
9 million.
what we're talking about is an over-budget show, by the way. So none of this should have cost 120 million total. There's no reason for it. Baz Luhrmann is just notorious for spending too much because he doesn't give a shit. If he wants to use Pink Panther, cost isn't in his mind. They're gonna use Pink Panther.
And it didn't serve to push anything forward. He just wanted Pink Panther.
Right, no, you could take it out and be fine.
It would have been A-okay. So I think we both give it a stamp on not worth.
Not worth.
Not worth $9 million, everybody. It's official.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us on our episode 2 review of The Get Down here on Boob Tube Buddies. Remember to support us by going to audibletrial.com/boobtubebuddies. Sign up for a free trial of Audible. Also, follow us on all our various social media networks. We'd love to have you there, and we're posting periodically about the things we're doing. We do have other shows as well. We've got shows. What are we doing right now, Dan?
Well, so you and I are doing The Get Down right now.
Oh, we also have BoJack Horseman that you.
We
and
got
I are
BoJack
doing.
Horseman. Of course, you've got Outcast.
Yeah, yeah.
The Outcast. That's Mothman and you know what? I'm not doing this. Mathis and Adam. I feel ridiculous every time. I think it's because I've never known either of them as Mothman or Foxman.
Right.
Even though that is Adam's last name. But they're doing Outcast. They also just did a review of Suicide Squad. You should check that out.
Yep.
You know, and again, subscribe. Give us some ratings. We really need the love.
Please do.
We're doing a lot better though. Apparently, you guys really liked episode 1 of The Get Down, so we're gonna keep that going.
And guys, we are very, very excited to continue this conversation on The Get Down because The Get Down is not just an interesting story; it is a very interesting production of a show. And the way it's shaping up so far to me, and I don't know if I can speak for you, but episode 2, I'm still very excited to see where the show goes, and I think we've got some great characters to dive into.
Yes, I also haven't seen all of the episodes.
That's not what I said.
And I'm so excited to be surprised by episodes after this moment.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Remember, find those who fan your flames. So this is Dan Barron.
Damn it. This is Nathan Graves.
Have a good night, buddies.
Have a good night, guys.